You keep carrying the pain and calling it life. But the truth is, most of us aren't living. We're enduring. We drag the weight of yesterday into today and wonder why every step feels heavy. We grip old wounds as if they are medals, rehearse old memories as if they define us, and cling to old identities as if they are the only ones we deserve. We call this normal. We call this strength. We call this life. But it is not life. It is survival disguised as existence. Pain arrives in moments, but suffering arrives through repetition. The hurt itself was real, yes. The betrayal, the loss, the disappointment, those moments carved themselves into you. But what keeps carving you now is not the event, it's your attachment to it. You replay it, retell it, relive it. You carry it like a story you're obligated to keep reading, even when your soul is begging you to close the chapter. You think that moving on means pretending it didn't matter. But letting go is not erasing the pain. It is refusing to let the pain erase you. You weren't born to walk through life with your head lowered under invisible weight. You weren't meant to shrink because someone else couldn't love you, or to doubt yourself because someone else doubted you first. You weren't designed to stay wounded simply because healing feels unfamiliar. But the longer you hold the pain, the more it becomes a part of your posture. You start expecting disappointment, preparing for rejection, anticipating failure. You convince yourself that this is just how life is. It's not life. It's the echo of a moment that deserved to stay behind you, not inside you. Ask yourself honestly, what are you still carrying that has long served its purpose? Whose voice still shapes your self-worth? What memory still directs your choices? What fear still pulls you away from opportunities? How many times have you said, this is just who I am, not because it's your truth, but because it's your wound speaking for you? Pain will stay as long as you shelter it. It will follow you as long as you keep opening the door. It will define you as long as you keep giving it your name. But the moment you decide to step into your own life, the moment you choose presence over memory, courage over habit, and truth over fear, everything shifts. You don't heal by fighting the past. You heal by refusing to recreate it. You don't grow by holding on. You grow by releasing what keeps your hands too full to receive anything new. You don't transform by carrying pain. You transform by understanding it, learning from it, and then setting it down. There is a life waiting for you, one that is lighter, wider, fuller, but it requires your hands to be free, free from the old story, free from the old identity, free from the old hurt. You keep carrying the pain and calling it life, but you are allowed to choose differently. You are allowed to walk away from the version of yourself built from survival. You are allowed to step into a version of yourself built from strength, clarity, and self-respect. The pain happened, but the carrying, that part is up to you. Pain is a teacher that speaks softly at first, arriving not with thunder, but with whispers, nudges, and subtle signs that something within us is misaligned. It begins as a faint discomfort, a quiet resistance, a small tension in the mind or in the heart that we often dismiss as temporary. We tell ourselves it's nothing, that it will pass, that we are strong enough to push through. And so we continue forward, unaware that a lesson is being offered long before the suffering becomes loud enough to demand our full attention. Pain never tries to overwhelm us in its first approach. It tries to guide us. It tries to illuminate what we refuse to see, to help us correct our course before the damage grows deeper. But because we are human, driven by habits, pride, denial, or fear, we often ignore these early signs, believing that enduring discomfort is just part of life. When pain speaks softly, it hopes we will pause and listen. Perhaps it is the gentle ache of stress reminding us that we are living out of balance. Perhaps it is the subtle heaviness we feel in relationships that are slowly draining our energy. Maybe it is that quiet dissatisfaction in our daily routine, the sense that we are betraying our deeper purpose. These signals are not meant to punish us, they are meant to protect us. Yet we frequently silence them by distracting ourselves, keeping busy, or convincing ourselves that everything is fine. The soft voice of pain becomes background noise, drowned out by our determination to maintain normality. But pain is patient, it waits, And when we continue down the same path without adjusting our direction, its voice grows stronger, no longer a whisper, but a clear message. As time goes on, the lessons we refuse to learn gently begin to escalate. The body starts to protest more loudly. The mind becomes restless. The heart grows heavier. What began as a faint discomfort evolves into tension, then pressure, then a deeper form of suffering that can no longer be dismissed. At this stage, pain is no longer simply a teacher. It becomes a messenger, delivering a truth we have avoided. It asks us to face our reality honestly. It urges us to let go of what is hurting us, to confront what we fear, to heal what has been neglected. And though the voice is louder now, the intention remains the same, to guide us back to alignment, to encourage us to change before life forces us to. If ignored further, pain can become drastic. The whispers we neglected become shouts. The tension becomes breakdown. The gentle nudge becomes a collapse we can no longer avoid. This is not because pain wants to destroy us, but because pain will use whatever volume is necessary to make us listen. It is a profound paradox. The longer we resist a lesson, the harsher the method becomes. What began as a soft reminder eventually transforms into a turning point. Many people only begin to transform their lives after hitting such moments, after heartbreak, burnout, illness, or loss, because pain has finally raised its voice to a pitch that cannot be overlooked. And yet, the teacher is the same, the lesson is the same, only the intensity changed because we were unwilling to learn in gentler conditions. But if we choose to listen early, pain becomes a powerful ally. It helps us navigate life with greater clarity. It teaches us to set boundaries, to rest before exhaustion, to speak our truth before resentment builds. It teaches us to honor our emotional needs, to recognize patterns that sabotage us, to walk away from what no longer supports our growth. When we respond to the first whisper, the lesson is easier, the suffering minimal, the growth smoother. Pain is not inherently cruel. It becomes harsh only when we insist on resisting what our inner wisdom already knows. It is the body's language when words fail, the heart's signal when intuition is ignored, the mind's attempt to return us to balance. Pain is a teacher that speaks softly at first because it wants to guide, not punish. It wants to awaken, not break. It wants to remind us that the earliest signals are opportunities, not threats, and that listening requires humility, awareness, and the courage to change before circumstances demand it. Pain does not delight in raising its voice. It raises its voice only because we refused to hear it when it was still gentle, still patient, still hoping we would choose the lighter path long before the weight became unbearable. Life becomes heavy only when we grip our suffering more tightly than our hope, because the weight we feel is rarely the weight of the world itself, but the weight of the stories we repeat, the memories we refuse to release, and the emotions we clutch as if they define us. Suffering is not simply what happens to us, it is what we continue to carry long after the moment has passed. Hope, on the other hand, is light, fluid, airy, yet we often treat it as fragile. We protect our wounds more fiercely than our dreams, as if letting go of suffering threatens our identity, and nurturing hope exposes us to disappointment. But this imbalance is precisely what makes life feel so unbearably heavy. When we grip suffering, we give it shape and structure, allowing it to settle into the corners of our mind, hardening into a burden that follows us through the days. We sometimes confuse holding on with being strong. We believe that bearing the weight makes us resilient, that enduring it silently is a sign of character. But gripping suffering is not strength, it is fear disguised as loyalty. We grow attached to familiar pain because it is predictable, because it asks nothing new from us, because it fits neatly into the narrative we have rehearsed for years. Hope, however, requires vulnerability. It asks us to imagine something different. It invites us to believe in possibilities we cannot yet see. It challenges us to trust ourselves again, even after disappointment. For many, this feels dangerous, uncertain, even naive. And so, we cling to our suffering instead, replaying old stories, reliving old wounds, reaffirming old limitations. The heaviness grows because we feed it with our attention, our belief, and our fear. Life becomes heavy when we choose familiarity over freedom, even if that familiarity hurts. We grip failure because it excuses us from trying again. We grip heartbreak because it shields us from risking love once more. We grip mistakes because they justify our self-doubt. In doing so, we unintentionally create a life in which suffering becomes our reference point, the lens through which we interpret every new experience. Every opportunity feels threatening. Every change feels dangerous. Every chance at growth feels like a gamble we're too afraid to take. Hope struggles to survive in an environment where the past is held more firmly than the future. Its voice becomes faint, overshadowed by the louder, more demanding echoes of our fears. But the heaviness we feel is not a consequence of life itself. It is a consequence of where we choose to place our hands. When we cling to our suffering, we leave no room to hold hope. Yet hope is not weak, it is not fragile. It is the quiet strength that allows us to rise from experiences that should have broken us. It is the force that turns pain into wisdom, endings into beginnings, and fear into courage. Hope makes the burden lighter because it shifts our gaze toward possibility rather than limitation. It is not blind optimism, but an inner resilience that whispers, even in difficulty, that a new path is still available. Hope does not eliminate suffering, but it prevents suffering from becoming our identity. It reminds us that pain is a moment, not a definition. When we grip hope more tightly, we begin to loosen our attachment to the stories that once held us back. We start seeing challenges as transitions instead of punishments. We allow ourselves to think beyond survival and move toward creation. Life becomes lighter not because the circumstances change instantly, but because our relationship to them does. Suddenly the same world feels different. The same struggles feel more navigable. The same emotions feel less consuming. The key is not to deny suffering, but to stop worshiping it. Pain demands to be acknowledged, but it does not need to be enshrined. There is a quiet art in holding suffering gently, allowing it space to teach without giving it the power to define. When we grip it too tightly, we suffocate our own growth. But when we loosen our grip and allow hope to balance the weight, life regains its movement and breath. Hope brings perspective, reminding us that we are not trapped in the moment we are in, that change is always possible, and that the future carries potential we have not yet imagined. Life becomes heavy only when suffering becomes our anchor instead of our lesson, when fear becomes our habit instead of our warning, when hopelessness becomes our comfort zone instead of our wake-up call. The heaviness dissolves the moment we dare to shift our grip, allowing hope to take its rightful place beside us rather than behind us. What we carry shapes our posture, not only in the physical sense, but in the way we stand in life, the way we approach challenges, the way we relate to others, and the way we see ourselves. Every unseen burden, emotional, mental, or spiritual, settles somewhere within us, influencing how we move through the world. Just as a heavy backpack pulls the shoulders forward and strains the spine, the invisible weight of regret, guilt, fear, or unresolved pain gradually bends the posture of the soul. Without realizing it, we begin to hunch inward, guarding ourselves from life rather than meeting it openly. The body mirrors the mind, and the mind echoes the body. What we carry becomes the story that shapes our stance, our habits, our reactions, and ultimately our way of being. Many people walk with a posture that tells the world their history before they speak a single word. You can often sense when someone carries disappointment in their chest, as if they're bracing for the next blow. You can recognize when someone carries anger in their shoulders, tight and lifted, as though constantly preparing for defense. You can see when someone carries shame, as their gaze drops and their presence shrinks. These postures are not conscious choices. They are the natural result of carrying too much for too long. We adjust ourselves to accommodate our burdens, even when those burdens no longer serve us. Over time, these adjustments become our default alignment, shaping not just how we stand, but how we feel and how we live. What we carry also affects the posture of our decisions. A person weighed down by past failures approaches new opportunities with hesitation, leaning backward instead of stepping forward. Someone burdened by past betrayals may stand rigid in relationships, unable to relax into trust. The posture becomes a psychological stance, either open or guarded, confident or tentative, flexible or tense. The weight influences the angle from which we see possibilities. When we are burdened, even simple paths seem uphill. When we carry too much, hope feels distant, and effort feels heavier than it needs to be. The posture of the mind determines the posture of our life. But the opposite is also true. Those who carry clarity, forgiveness, and resilience have a different posture, one that reflects a lightness of being. Their shoulders are not dragged by old memories. Their chests are open, not closed by fear. Their steps are steady, not hesitant. They stand aligned with their values, their vision, and their inner truth. They may still encounter difficulty, but the posture they bring to hardship changes the entire experience. Instead of collapsing under pressure, they meet challenges with groundedness and balance. The weight they carry is intentional, not inherited. They choose what belongs and release what does not. It is important to understand that we often carry more than what is ours. Expectations from others, unspoken responsibilities, inherited emotional patterns, and the echo of voices long gone, all can settle onto us if we are not mindful. These weights influence how we perceive ourselves. Someone who carries the belief that they are not enough will unconsciously shrink, pulling inward to avoid being seen. Someone who carries the belief that they must always be strong will stand tall but rigid, never allowing themselves to rest or soften. In this way, beliefs become burdens, and burdens become posture. We shape ourselves according to what we think we must bear. Awareness is the first step in understanding the posture of our life. It requires us to observe the way we move and ask what invisible load is influencing our stance. Are our shoulders tense because we are holding on to responsibility that is not ours alone? Is our back tight because we refuse to surrender control? Is our head lowered because we lack self-worth? These questions guide us to the deeper truth beneath our physical and emotional alignment. When we recognize the weight we carry, we gain the power to set some of it down. Releasing burdens does not mean erasing the past. It means acknowledging that not every memory, emotion, or expectation deserves a permanent place in our lives. Some experiences are meant to teach us, not to anchor us. Some lessons are meant to guide us, not immobilize us. When we let go of what no longer belongs, our posture begins to change naturally. The body relaxes, the mind opens, the spirit lifts. We start to stand not as someone shaped by their burdens, but as someone shaped by their growth. What we carry shapes our posture, and when we choose consciously what we carry, we reshape not only our stance, but our entire way of being. Awareness is the path from unconscious endurance to conscious transformation. Because without awareness, we simply tolerate life rather than participate in it. Many people move through their days not fully understanding why they feel heavy, irritated, empty, or unfulfilled. They adapt, cope, and push through, believing endurance is the best they can offer. They accept patterns that exhaust them, relationships that diminish them, and habits that slowly erode their potential. This is unconscious endurance, a state where one survives rather than shapes their own existence. It is living on autopilot, repeating old narratives, responding from old wounds, and carrying emotional weight that has never been examined. Awareness is the turning point, the shift that brings clarity to the fog, allowing us to see not only what we are experiencing, but why we are experiencing it. Awareness begins as a subtle recognition, an inner pause where something doesn't feel right anymore. It may emerge in moments of stillness, or in the middle of routine, or during a sudden emotional reaction that surprises us. This moment of noticing is the first step out of endurance. When we become aware, we start distinguishing between what is truly our choice and what is merely our conditioning. We begin to see the beliefs that have shaped our behavior, the fears that have limited our growth, and the unspoken expectations that we have unconsciously obeyed. Awareness doesn't immediately solve anything, but it reveals what has been hidden beneath the surface. It shines a light on the mechanisms that have quietly directed our actions for years. Once awareness takes root, endurance becomes less tolerable. What we could once ignore now demands attention. We begin to question the routines that drain us, the relationships that no longer align with who we are, and the emotional habits that keep us stuck. Awareness brings honesty, and honesty invites change. It becomes increasingly difficult to pretend that everything is fine when we have seen the truth behind our discomfort. This is where conscious transformation begins, in the willingness to face inconvenient realities and recognize that growth often requires unlearning before it allows new learning. But awareness is not always gentle. It can reveal parts of ourselves we've avoided confronting, resentments we've buried, fears we've masked with productivity, insecurities we've denied, or anger we've disguised as indifference. It exposes the inner conflicts between who we are and who we pretend to be. This confrontation can be uncomfortable, even destabilizing, but it is also liberating. Awareness gives us agency. It allows us to step out of roles we never consciously chose: the peacemaker, the overachiever, the caretaker, the silent sufferer, the stoic. It helps us see where we have been living out expectations rather than living out truth. Through awareness, we begin to make decisions intentionally rather than reactively. We recognize that we do not have to repeat what hurt us, imitate what limited us, or maintain what exhausts us. We begin setting boundaries, not from anger, but from clarity. We begin choosing rest, not from guilt, but from understanding. We begin speaking honestly, not to provoke, but to align our inner world with our outer actions. This shift from unconscious behavior to conscious choice marks the entrance into transformation. Transformation does not happen all at once. It unfolds gradually, one choice at a time. But every conscious decision loosens the grip of old patterns. Awareness also deepens our connection to the present moment. When we become aware, we stop living in the shadows of past experiences and the anxieties of imagined futures. We return to ourselves. We notice our thoughts without becoming them. We observe our emotions without being overwhelmed by them. Awareness creates a space between stimulus and response, giving us room to choose a different path. In this space lies freedom, the freedom to act with intention, to respond with wisdom, and to shape a life that reflects who we truly are rather than who we were forced to be. Unconscious endurance keeps us surviving. Awareness invites us to start living. It teaches us that life does not improve simply by pushing through. It improves when we begin to understand the forces within us. Transformation is not an accidental occurrence. It is the result of awareness applied consistently, courageously, and compassionately. Through awareness, we stop being passive recipients of our experiences and become active participants in our evolution. True strength is not in holding everything. It is in knowing what no longer serves us, because the world often teaches us that endurance and accumulation are signs of power. We grow up believing that being strong means carrying burdens without complaint, handling every responsibility alone, and persevering through pain as though suffering is a badge of honor. But true strength is not measured by how much we can endure. It is revealed in our ability to discern, release, and redirect our energy toward what actually supports our growth. Holding everything is not strength. It is fear disguised as resilience. It is the belief that letting go means losing control, failing, or disappointing others. Yet the greatest courage lies in acknowledging that some weights are meant to be set down, not carried indefinitely. We often cling to what hurts us because it is familiar, whether it is a relationship that drains us, a habit that limits us, a belief that diminishes us, or an identity we outgrew long ago. We hold on because it feels safer than stepping into the unknown. The mind resists change, even when change leads to liberation. It whispers that we are being irresponsible by letting go, that we are giving up, that we are abandoning a part of ourselves. But many things we cling to were never meant to accompany us for our entire journey. Some experiences are meant to guide us, and once their purpose is fulfilled, holding on to them becomes a form of self-imprisonment. Strength emerges when we can look honestly at what we carry and ask whether it supports who we are becoming. To know what no longer serves us requires awareness and honesty. It requires the willingness to examine our attachments without judgment. This process is not always easy. It may reveal truths we've avoided, that a dream we once had no longer aligns with our current values, that a relationship we invest in out of habit has run its course, or that the identity we cling to is built on expectations rather than authenticity. These realizations challenge us emotionally because they confront our sense of self. Letting go forces us to acknowledge change, and change forces us to confront uncertainty. But without this inner examination, we become collectors of outdated emotions, outdated beliefs, and outdated versions of ourselves. True strength involves making decisions that honor our well-being. It means choosing peace over approval, choosing growth over familiarity, choosing authenticity over obligation. It means recognizing when something once valuable has become heavy, not because it failed, but because we evolved. Many people confuse loyalty with self-sacrifice, believing that staying in the same place out of duty is noble. But loyalty without alignment becomes a form of self-betrayal. Strength is the willingness to shift, to grow, to evolve, even when the world does not understand. It is the courage to trust that releasing what no longer serves us creates space for what does. Letting go does not mean erasing the past. It means appreciating the role it played and acknowledging that its time has passed. This kind of release is not rejection, it is completion. It is recognizing that holding on is costing us more energy than it provides. Just as a tree sheds its leaves to survive the winter, we must release what drains us so we can renew ourselves. Nature teaches us this lesson repeatedly. Growth requires release. Yet humans resist this natural process, clinging to attachments long after their meaning has faded. The strength lies in aligning ourselves with the rhythm of change rather than fighting against it. When we let go of what no longer serves us, our inner world becomes lighter, our thoughts become clearer, our energy becomes more focused. We begin to act from intention rather than compulsion. Space opens within us for new experiences, new insights, and new forms of self-expression. We realize that strength was never in the carrying, but in the choosing. Carrying everything leads to exhaustion. Choosing what to carry leads to empowerment. Strength is not found in the weight itself, but in the wisdom behind the weight we accept. True strength invites us to live with clarity and purpose. It encourages us to differentiate between perseverance and self-neglect, between endurance and stagnation, between commitment and attachment. It teaches us that releasing is not losing, but making room for alignment. It reminds us that we are not defined by what we hold on to, but by what we choose to embrace as we grow. To step into a new life, you must stop rehearsing the old one, because every time you replay the same memories, repeat the same thoughts, and respond from the same wounds, you recreate the reality you're trying to leave behind. The past is a powerful force, not because it controls us, but because we unconsciously give it permission to shape our present. Many people long for change while holding tightly to the patterns that prevent transformation. They say they want peace, but keep revisiting the conflicts that hurt them. They say they want confidence, but continue telling themselves the same self-doubting stories. They say they want love, but carry forward fears from relationships that ended long ago. The old life repeats, not because it is destiny, but because it is familiar. Familiarity can feel safer than possibility, even when it limits us. Rehearsing the old life means living through memory rather than intention. It means responding to new situations with outdated emotions. It means approaching opportunities with the mindset that belonged to a version of yourself that no longer exists. The mind is comfortable with repetition. It prefers predictability, so it will replay old scripts, even painful ones, because they require no effort to recreate. The problem is that these scripts silently dictate our actions, choices, and expectations. When we keep rehearsing them, we unconsciously reject the new paths available to us. We sabotage opportunities because they don't match the reality we have rehearsed. We overlook possibilities because we are too busy analyzing the past. We interpret neutral situations through the lens of former pain, turning shadows into threats and stepping stones into reminders of past mistakes. Stepping into a new life requires willingness to challenge the beliefs, identities, and emotional reflexes that keep us anchored in repetition. It requires us to interrupt the automatic patterns that say, "This is just who I am," or "Things always go this way," or "I've seen this before and it never ends well." These phrases sound like wisdom, but they are often fear disguised as certainty. They keep us rehearsing old outcomes. A new life asks for a new script, new thoughts that support growth, new habits that nurture strength, and new interpretations that reflect our evolving understanding. It demands that we allow ourselves to be beginners again, open to learning and unlearning, without assuming that we already know how the story ends. One of the most powerful forms of rehearsal is emotional repetition. If someone has been hurt in the past, the mind may rehearse distrust as a form of protection. If someone has failed, it may rehearse self-doubt to avoid risk. If someone has been abandoned, it may rehearse fear of attachment to avoid loss. These emotional rehearsals feel logical, even responsible, but they ultimately recreate the very conditions we wish to escape. To step into a new life, we must recognize that old emotions are not reliable guides for new experiences. They reflect where we have been, not where we are going. Growth requires emotional courage, the ability to feel something new even when the old feeling feels safer. Stepping into a new life also means releasing identities that were built from survival rather than authenticity. Many people define themselves by their wounds, their failures, or their past roles. They say, "I'm the one who always sacrifices," or "I'm the one who never fits in," or "I'm the one who gets hurt." These stories may have once helped make sense of pain, but over time they become cages. A new life asks us to loosen these identities and allow something larger, freer, and truer to emerge. It invites us to imagine ourselves not as a repetition of our past, but as a possibility waiting to be shaped. Letting go of old rehearsals does not mean forgetting what happened. It means refusing to let those experiences define every step forward. It means acknowledging that transformation requires new behavior, not just new desires. It means practicing new ways of thinking, even when they feel unfamiliar. It means taking actions that align with the life we want, rather than the life we've endured. Every choice we make either strengthens the old script or writes a new one. A new life begins the moment we stop rehearsing the old one, the moment we choose presence over memory, courage over repetition, and possibility over fear.